Julia Jallo.
The Honorable Vice President of the Republic of Sierra Leone, Dr. Mohamed Jallo, Ministers of Government of the Republic of Sierra Leone that are present here, Ministers of Education from participating countries, Permanent Secretaries from participating countries, our development partners, invited guests, members of the press, ladies and gentlemen, good morning.
My name is Stella Bangura, a TV presenter, host of On the Spot with Stella TV show, alongside with David Banya, who is a Senior Permanent Secretary for the Ministry of Basic and Senior Secondary Education. He is the administrative head of the ministry. And today we will be your host. Thank you.
Honorable Vice President, the Ministers of Education and their permanent secretaries from 14 countries, including Sierra Leone, are assembled here this morning in a conference and will continue for the next 2 days to deliberate on issues of gender equality in education. The various speakers listed on the program will provide information on the need for the conference. But suffice it for me to mention that addressing the systematic barriers that impede gender equality in education requires solution at national level. National dialogue, it is believed, will identify, address, and eliminate gender biases in the sector. For today and the next 2 days, policymakers in the education sector in the 14 participating countries will exchange ideas and experiences which could lead to the development of common strategy on how to approach gender equality in education.
Would like to specially welcome our guests, our visitors, our brothers and sisters from across Africa. This morning, from many countries, we especially recognize from Burkina Faso, Chad, the Gambia, Liberia, Mali, Mauritania, Mozambique, Niger, Nigeria, South Sudan, Tanzania, Uganda, Ghana, the USA, Senegal, Eswatini, and of course, we the host, Sierra Leone. We welcome you all to the very beautiful land of Sierra Leone, and we hope that you would find some time to enjoy and bask in the warmth, the beauty, and the comfort that you will find in Sierra Leone. It's often said that Sierra Leone is one of very few countries that you would have to actually enjoy all modes of transportation to get into Sierra Leone. You obviously have to go through the road, you fly, and then you go through the water. And I hope you've all enjoyed that experience. We deserve a round of applause for that, please. So let's welcome Helen.
Okay, so like you've heard from Stella, from the countries that are participating, we have both Anglophone as well as Francophone countries. So at this point, we would now like to welcome Ellen to come up and give a short note in respect of those who are the Anglophone speakers.
Thank you. Son Excellence, Monsieur le Vice-président, honorables ministres, honorables vice-ministres secrétaires généraux, amis de UNGEI, UNICEF et nos autres partenaires, je voudrais souhaiter la bienvenue spécialement à nos amis venus des pays francophones et juste une petite note technique pour vous dire qu'il y aura l'interprétation en live à travers vos casques tout au long de ces 3 jours. On souhaite une très très bonne séjour ici et une très bonne réunion. Merci beaucoup.
Next one is for the video there. So after that short note from Ellen, we will now like to see a video on radical inclusion. Radical inclusion is a policy of the government of Sierra Leone to address issues that are extremely radical in terms of education. We wouldn't want to spoil your appetite. For this, the video will do, and so we'll now call on those that are responsible to screen the video so you can see how radical inclusion has served to remove the barriers to gender in education in Sierra Leone. Thank you.
If indeed no child should be left behind, then it shouldn't matter whether you have a physical challenge, whether you have cognitive challenge, whether you're a girl who's living in a rural area who's pregnant, or a parent learner. Everybody should be able to access and stay safely in school.
The National Policy on Radical Inclusion in Schools by the Government of Sierra Leone provides a clear roadmap for the day-to-day implementation of holistic inclusive education in schools, communities, and the country. the Ministry of Basic and Senior Secondary Education has worked extensively with partners to promote inclusion and guarantee a positive experience for all students, regardless of their status in society. The policy on radical inclusion particularly emphasizes the inclusion of historically marginalized groups, pregnant girls and parent learners, children living with disabilities, children from rural and underserved areas, and children from low-income families. The policy seeks to create an inclusive education system and learning environment that allows all children in Sierra Leone to fulfill their potential. When Sierra Leone schools closed for 9 months in 2014-2015 to stop the spread of Ebola, girls experienced higher dropout rates as a result of teenage pregnancy, domestic violence, and sexual abuse. Back then, they were prevented from attending school. Today, hundreds of pregnant girls and pregnant learners are continuing their education after the COVID-19 school closures.
My name is Masakwe. I did SS3 Commerce. I teach Beke from 2016. From 2016, I teach Beke. 2018, I get Bele. In the month of 2014. So I did with friends there. Say I get the Bele. I'm born. And the man will give me the let me be responsible. So the partner where to go tap to, the man will let me back na Kumga and be responsible for that. Let's say I won't let me pick it in the first picking. So in back na school, I don't begin attend. Say what's there now? 2018 for last seats, but I never seats, money no day. So this free education now we don't come. Now the woman say my return back na school. Now I can't get this order back. Now the woman say if not so, and it's very hard for me to sit back. For me to return back na school seats. So now I don't come back to school for last seats.
While approximately 50% of all schools in Sierra Leone have at least one student with disability enrolled, the primary school level accounts for the highest percentage of schools with disabled students enrolled. Government has strengthened support for special needs institutions across the country.
Radical inclusion is something which is strengthening physically challenged or not physically challenged people where they don't have speech, they pass for make them go to school. They force them with or without and for going to school. Even you don't have belly, you know me, so you don't take belly, you go then at us. You go still go to school, chill, and wait for the river. Then even with the physically challenged people there, they put you in a school for make we able to do better thing tomorrow for ourselves.
Mohammed S. Jallo, Assistant Director, Special Needs Education, NBSSE. The national policy on radical inclusion offers a huge potential for influencing specific actions around special needs mainstreaming. Its 4 sub-objectives, namely creating inclusive learning environments, target support to vulnerable learners, engage families and communities, and lastly, enable the policy environment and implementation, offers to redress such critical gaps as the inadequate school curriculum, specialized teacher training, provision of assistive devices, and teaching and learning materials in accessible formats to achieving education for all.
We have seen that across the board, we see many more girls enrolling in schools. Sierra Leone is nearing gender parity. When in 2018, gender parity, that is the number of boys to the number of girls in school, was about 60% overall. That means for every 100 boys, there were only about 60 girls. And in 2019, after the free quality school education came about, we were at 0.84. That means for every 100 boys, there were 84 girls. And last year, we were over 0.9 That means for every 10 boys, there are 9 girls. And according to the latest surveys, annual school census surveys, Sierra Leone has achieved gender parity in basic education. And in senior secondary education, we have achieved gender parity at all levels apart from SS1. And we're sure that we're going to, over the next year, to meet gender parity in schools in Sierra Leone.
Socioeconomically, poverty decreases significantly with increased educational levels, which is why the free quality school education policy of the Sierra Leone government aims to achieve great access to education by reducing financial barriers to school enrollment and improving teaching and learning outcomes for all students.
The idea behind radical inclusion. Well, the ministry defined radical inclusion as the intentional inclusion of categories of children that have been excluded or left out, or they had not received the attention and the focus that they were supposed to be receiving. And we are talking about 4 categories of children who have been left out, whether intentionally or just our attitude towards them or just plain neglect. And these are children with disabilities, children living in rural remote areas, children living in poverty, and girls, especially, and this one is new, girls who are pregnant. Previously, they were not allowed to go to school as long as they were pregnant and they started showing. Radical inclusion means that we have lifted that ban, and so all of those people are now allowed to go to school, and the government is paying the fees as well as providing teaching and learning materials for all of these people.
Rural areas have greater concentrations of poverty than towns and cities, and practical problems such as access to schools, transportation to school, hunger, and trained and qualified teachers are prominent. There are 4 main goals of the radical inclusion summarized in the following 4 sub-objectives. Today, there is already progress. Many more girls are enrolling and finishing school than ever before. Many more schools have children with disabilities, and there is specific learning support to children from remote regions, including the radio teaching program. This policy is expected to be reviewed after a 5-year period. The policy and implementation will be reviewed to strengthen the impact and to advance new interventions as needed. Benchmarks and criteria need to continually be developed to understand the indicators regarding the quality of education and review and augment the existing policy.
So the video just ended, and we'll call it radical because before this time, certain things that the policy has planned to address were not happening. So that's why it is radical. So we'll move on quickly with the rest of the program. And now it is the official welcome by the government of Sierra Leone for this conference. And for this, we'd like to call on the Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation in the person of Madam Mamadi Gobe Kamara to officially welcome.
Your Excellency, Honorable Vice President, Mr. Mohamed Jules Jallo, Ministers of Government, including our host, Minister of Basic and Senior Secondary Education, Dr. David Senge, Members of Parliament, members of the Diplomatic and Consular Corps, our visiting delegation from across the continent, members of the Fourth Estate, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. It is my absolute pleasure to welcome you on behalf of the government and people of Sierra Leone, and especially so on behalf of our host, Dr. David Senge, Minister of Basic and Senior Secondary Education, and his dedicated team to this high-level meeting on transformative leadership for gender equality in and through education. For those of you who have come from afar, let me add that you're very much welcome to the beautiful shores of Sierra Leone. Today's event is special and historic for several reasons. First, Sierra Leone is leading this initiative by being one of the forerunners in the West African sub-region to host such a groundbreaking meeting. But particularly so, this initiative serves as a significant milestone and precursor to the Transforming Education Summit, one of the key high-level events of the 77th session of the UN General Assembly in New York in September this year. A key objective of that summit is to reimagine education systems for today and tomorrow, and to reinvigorate efforts to achieve Sustainable Development Goal 4, which pertains to quality education. Historically, as you may be aware, from the period of missionary education through colonial education and to present day, Sierra Leone, particularly this government, considers education as the fulcrum around which other critical development activities revolve. Third, the focus on achieving gender equality in and through education underscores the reality of gender inequality, and our determination to bridge the gap is particularly heartwarming. Honorable Vice President, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, despite the gains made in gender parity in education globally in the past 2 decades, many girls and boys still face the challenges of harmful gender norms that affect their chances of completing quality and inclusive education. In Sierra Leone, with the astute leadership of President Dr. Julius Maada Bio, we have achieved a lot in recent years, especially in terms of gender parity across all school levels through the introduction of the free quality education program. We have increased significantly the number of student enrollment, the number of schools, teacher-pupil ratio, and many, many more. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, while we acknowledge progress in Sierra Leone and other places, the world continues to grapple with gender-based teaching methods, lack of home support, gender-based violence, and other factors which has and continue to contribute to limited and unequal learning outcomes for girls and boys. Clearly, the task ahead is enormous, but not insurmountable. As a government, we remain firmly committed. Therefore, it is my fervent hope that the next 3 days will provide an opportunity to reflect on these seemingly intractable issues and explore what it takes for African education systems to become an influential force for change towards gender equal societies. Ladies and gentlemen, I am glad that we recognize that achieving gender equality in and through education requires transformational leadership. Conceptually, transformational leadership involves vision creation, intellectual stimulation, creativity, effective change management, and motivating others to accomplish predetermined goals. In other words, transformational leaders know what they want and how to get the job done. All of us in this room today believe in the vision of gender equality in education. So we know what we want, but can we get the job done? As transformational leaders, we must play a part in building an alliance of high-level gender in education champions, ready to drive and influence action for girls' education and gender equality at national, continental, and global levels. So I crave your indulgence to play your part so that together we get the change we want to see. Play your own part so that we transform our education systems to achieve gender equality and shift gender norms. In the next 3 days, we have an opportunity to recharge our batteries and reinforce our commitment to gender equality in and through education. We have an opportunity to outline the next steps in the lead up to the Transforming Education Summit in September 2022 during the UN General Assembly. Honorable Vice President, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, I know it's going to be a highly thought-provoking and engaging 3-day event. Nevertheless, I would urge you to please find time to explore our pristine beaches, and this goes for our guests, our visiting delegation. Please find time to visit our pristine beaches and sample some of our famous cuisines. Remember that you're in Freetown, a city where everything is free, except you have to pay for it. Once again, welcome to beautiful Sierra Leone. Bienvenue, dans la belle Sierra Leone. I wish you well. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs, Madam Mamadi Gobe. We cannot talk about gender equality without paying key attention to gender parity, especially in education. As we try to dismantle barriers to girls' and women's full participation in the socio-economic development in the continent, which is said to potentially boost African economies by 10% of their collective GDP by 2025. And that's actually according to research by the McKinsey Global Institute. You know, a while back in 2017, Sierra Leone hosted the He for She campaign, where the UN Women Representative to Ethiopia, Africa Union, and Economic Commission for Africa, Leti Chiwara, stated that after the launch of that event, Sierra Leone will be one of the countries with high interest in women economic empowerment and gender equality. And we can see that today. A lot of interest, a lot of push to empower women in Sierra Leone. And that's why we're happy to host this high-level delegation. There are many players, many stakeholders, individuals, local and international organizations who are interested in pushing the agenda of women forward. And I'd like to call one of such players on stage to give a poem. And that is, well, it's actually a video poem by a youth activist, Karimot. I hope you enjoy it.
The time is now, Asikotito, for us to remove the specks in our eyes and see the problems at our feet. For us to see millions of girls' dreams flowing down the drain. Dear ministers, I am not just one girl. I carry the voices of millions of African girls. Girls who do not know the four walls of a classroom. Girls whose dreams have been cut short. Girls who birth babies when they are still learning how to say their names. Girls who are told they can dream, but never to dream big. Dear ministers, Leton M. Mendinon, the time is now. I charge you to rise and take charge for education that include girls, to make sure schools are safe spaces for girls to learn and grow. Dear ministers, I am talking to you. Let Ada Eze from Nigeria, Aduna from Mauritania, Fadila from Tanzania, Kadiatu from Mali, Tene from Sierra Leone, Uyandai from South Sudan, Hasma from Burkina Faso, Memuna from Chad, Hawa from Gambia, Aisatu from Niger, Victoria from Liberia, Mandisa from Mozambique, Taraji from Uganda, and millions of other girls. Be reminded that this world is our shared space, that education is our collective right. I look to an Africa, a motherland, where girls dream without barriers, where girls can be whoever and whatever they want to be. Hear me speak. I do not come alone. I carry the voices of a long line of Black girls. Dear ministers, today you sit across the table. I want you to know that none of us is equal until all of us are equal. The time is now. Haliwaktili Han. For you to step up and make decisions, to take actions that will transform education for gender equality here and now.
Ladies and gentlemen, please, another round of applause for that video. I'd like to call on stage now the Deputy Minister of Gender and Children's Affairs, Women's Affairs, Honorable Hindowa, on stage. Please, a round of applause for him.
Madam Chair, Excellency, the Honorable Vice President, the UNICEF country representative, the UN family, members of the Diplomatic and Consular Corps, the UNGEI Director, ministers of government, my brother, Dr. Divimoy Nasenge, Minister of Basic and Senior Secondary School, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, the Fourth Estate. I bring you greetings from the Ministry of Gender and Children's Affairs, and especially the Honorable Minister, Madam Mantita Ali, who is unavoidably absent out of the country, attending to other gender issues. Your Excellency, the Vice President, the Ministry of Gender and Children's Affairs is happy to be a part of this all-important conference and to lend a voice to the discussion on transformative leadership for gender equality and through education high-level meetings as the Ministry of Basic and Senior Secondary School Education have organized this morning. Your Excellency, the Honorable Vice President, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, as you already know, the flagship program of our government under the leadership of His Excellency, the President, Brigadier Retired Dr. Julius Maada Bio, that human capital development is very key. And the issue of gender empowerment and women's equality runs through his blessed verses. When you talk about human capital development, we can only achieve those ones when you talk about gender transformative and gender parity. Since the establishment of the Ministry of Gender and Children's Affairs on November 7, 2019, we're pleased to note, Your Excellency, the Honorable Vice President, that strides have been made with our ambitious target to ensure that gender equality, women's empowerment, and child protections are key. That is why today, this morning, we are here as a ministry to make our input on this all-important occasion. In line with the medium national term development, especially cluster 5, which are making progress, which speaks volume on children's protection, child protection, and women's equality, our ministry has taken tremendous strides. We launched the Gender Equality and Women's Empowerment Policy in November 2020. The policy speaks of 13 objectives and 10 sectors. Our Theory for Change articles for Vision of UNGEI in Sierra Leone, it illustrates the maturity, reinforcing pathways and activities to sustainable inequality between women and men. With a focus on greater inputs, investment on our approach in mainstreaming and providing budgetary support to women's empowerment. A 2-year project designed to establish sustainable structures that will facilitate the development and tracking of gender, disaggregated budgets, and integrated gender issues into every sectoral policy, legislation, and programs. To ensure gender mainstreaming has a legitimate anchor, the gender bill was developed. It's now at Parliament. The Honorable Minister has done the first reading. We are waiting on Parliament for the second reading for its ratification. The bill will pass into law to compel policymakers ensure that gender dimension is mainstreamed in every policy, law, and project plan. The bill will also, when enacted into law, will make a huge shift in addressing the gender imbalances in the political, social, economic fields. It will ensure a minimum of 30% representation for women in elective and appointment positions. Promoting gender equality through sustainable systematic involvement in employment, training, education, access to finance, and strengthen gender mainstreaming and budgeting. Furthermore, Your Excellency, we have intensified our fight to end all forms of violence against women and girls. This is evident in the adoption of policies measures such as revision of the Child Rights Act that will harmonize the age and marriage of criminalize the FGM under the age of 18, and of course, the Sexual Offences Act of 2019. Stipulates a minimum sentence of 15 years for rape, conviction, and life imprisonment for sexual penetration of minors. Additionally, Your Excellency, measures include the development of the male involvement strategy and the introduction of integrated sexual education curriculum within the basic education curriculum for prevention of SGBV in responding to SGBV. We have operationalized a free rape toll line, 116, to talk about issues affecting sexual penetrations. The one-stop centers has been constructed and is running in 4 districts in the country. As we establish the first ever sexual offences modern courts, which addresses the cases in record, I am pleased to tell this honorable gathering, Your Excellency, that the prevalence and the high rate before now has dropped down to 2.5% from 11%, which to us, we have done very well, and as a country, we are moving forward. We know from evidence that economic empowerment for women are in stronger positions to protect themselves and their children from gender-based violence. So for this reason, the government of His Excellency the President, Brigadier Dr. Bio, has given a 1 billion loan seed money for women's empowerment for a country. The ministry is now in close talks with Child Care International on the model of disbursing these funds. This will go a long way to addressing issues of economic security for females through access to finance. Our ministry is committed to collaborating with relevant stakeholders, development partners, non-state and state actors to improve the livelihood of our women and child protections. Before I conclude, Your Excellency, the Honorable Vice President, our ministry is much more delighted this morning to be a part of the implementation of the transformative leadership for gender equality through education. And our normative and operative measures has positioned the ministry in a pole pushing position towards achieving this gender equality. On that note, the Honorable Vice President, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the Ministry of Gender and Children's Affairs, I want to ask that we will have a fruitful deliberation on this 3-day conference, and we wish all our guests a safe stay in the Republic of Sierra Leone and a safe return to their home. Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Deputy Minister of Gender and Children's Affairs, Honorable Hindoa. So now I'd like to call on stage for another remarks. Okay. Okay. I think there's okay, I think that's done now. So can we now please put our hands together for UNICEF representative Wilberforce Tenge. A round of applause, please.
Thank you. His Excellency Dr. Mohamed Julde Jallow, Vice President of the Republic of Sierra Leone, Honorable Dr. David Moenina Senge, Minister of Basic and Secondary Education in Sierra Leone, and other officials of the ministry here present. All the distinguished ministers of education from various African countries, Ms. Antara Ganguly, head of UNGEI Secretariat, UN colleagues here present, members of the media, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of the United Nations Children's Fund, UNICEF, I bring you greetings from the UNICEF representative, Dr. Suleiman Brimo, who is unavoidably absent here today. I will start by thanking the government of Sierra Leone for convening this high-level meeting on transformative leadership for gender equality in education, a platform for ministers of education to convene and build an alliance of high-level drive and influence action for girls' education and gender equality at national, continental, and global levels. Over the past decades, UNICEF has been fortunate to work with, or has been fortunate to work in partnership with governments across Africa towards progress in getting and keeping children in schools. Through our collective efforts globally and in the African continent, the gross intake ratio for the last grade of primary school has increased from 59% in 2000 to 73% in 2019. While global primary and secondary school enrollment rates are getting closer to equal for girls and boys, that is 90% for male and 89% for female. In Sierra Leone, the 2021 exam results show that gender parity has been achieved in basic education, and for the first time, more girls are sitting for national exams than boys. Despite these commendable strides, the African continent still occupies the top 3 spots for the percentage of adolescents of lower secondary school age who are out of school, with literacy rates among the 15 to 24-year-olds being the lowest in West and Central Africa. We are also concerned that in most African countries, spending on education is below international benchmarks. About 60% of governments in Africa, where data is available, invested less than 4% of their GDP in education in 2019. Some critical subsectors such as ECE, that is early child education, are left behind, with less than 5% of education budget allocation. Disparities which disadvantage girls still persist across African countries, and these include prevailing harmful practices such as child marriage, teenage pregnancies, sexual violence, taboos about menstruation and child labor, which further create barriers for girls to attain higher levels of quality and continuous education. As a result, in low-income countries, including countries across Africa, secondary school completion rates for girls continue to lag, with only 36% of girls completing lower secondary school compared to 44% of boys. UNICEF therefore congratulates the various efforts taken in the continent to overcome these barriers to education. For example, the government of Sierra Leone's 2020 policy decision on inclusion of pregnant girls and young lactating mothers to remain in school is a progressive step towards achieving universal education and ensuring inclusive education. The 2020 Radical Inclusion Policy strongly promotes gender equity and inclusion of the most vulnerable children, including marginalized and pregnant girls. Through this policy, our girls are getting the opportunity to continue with education and the pursuit of their life dreams, despite the pregnancy. We also acknowledge the government of Sierra Leone for the successful implementation of the free quality school education program, which is contributing to improved school enrollment. UNICEF, with support from the Global Partnership for Education, GPE, has been a key partner in supporting this ambitious flagship government program, which is making a significant contribution towards reaching the Sustainable Development Goals, ensuring inclusive quality education for all children. Also, through the support of the GPE, UNICEF is supporting the government to provide quality training for teachers in early grades so that children will have a solid foundation for success in school and throughout life. To ensure foundational learning, UNICEF is also supporting the expansion of primary education for all children, especially in areas where access to pre-primary opportunities is scarce. In addition, UNICEF is pleased to work together with the Ministry of Basic and Senior Secondary Education, UNGEI's Education Initiative, and Plan International in this current initiative to call for gender transformative education systems. In collaboration with various governments, we hope to explore ways in which all parts of the education system can now allow all girls and boys to gain access to and complete education cycles, and in addition, for them to be equally empowered in and through education. Some immediate actions which UNICEF is recommending for government across Africa include: 1, to bring the learning to the learner with a focus on reducing inequalities by systematically tackling the multiple vulnerabilities that affect learners. Support rapid learning recovery, especially after periods of conflict of pandemics. Use innovations to bridge the gaps to reach every child and adolescent through a hybrid of formal and alternative pathways, including radio, TV, catch-up and accelerated learning with skills, disability inclusion, Quranic education, combining education with social protection measures. Invest in digital learning using a whole systems approach, including investing in connectivity, solar power, content digitization, and enabling policy guidelines that aim to reduce the digital divide. Update curricula to address youth-defined priorities and respond to contemporary labor market needs to enhance employability of young people who are set to enter the labor market. Make education and learning the business of everyone, which requires a response across the government and society. increase public investment in education, and invest more equitably and efficiently within the sector, including prioritizing early childhood education. We therefore wish you a successful discussions over the next 3 days and look forward to finding ways in which we can collectively remove stereotypes, attitudes, norms, and practices which trigger persistent inequalities in education. Thank you very much.
That was Wilberforce Tengbe, UNICEF representative. Like he rightly said, education, or the business of education, is the business of everyone and requires adequate funding. And I'm proud to say that Sierra Leone is one of very few countries in Africa that has budgetary allocation of a minimum 20%. This is very phenomenal, especially, yes, we deserve a round of applause. Absolutely. Thank you very much. This is very phenomenal, especially when you take into consideration that a lot of African countries allocate about 4% to education. And this is quite worrying, and probably why it's very important that we're having this sort of delegation with so many representatives across Africa. Now, we can't talk about education, like I said, without having a lot of stakeholders, and the youth are one of those key stakeholders. We had a video poem from Karimot, who is a youth activist, and another person who is going to give us a quick note here is a youth activist.
I'm calling on Fatou Sise. Please come on stage. Let me say how privileged I am to join a family of world leaders and change makers. I am Kadia Tutoli. I am a feminist advocate from the Youth Advisory Panel, Girls Out Loud, Youth Ambassador Planning International Sierra Leone, and also an awardee for the 2021 Gender Transformative Awards organized by Planning International. Thank you, Permanent Secretary, and thank you to the Sierra Leone Ministry of Basic Education, UNGEI, to the Gender at the Center Initiative, and to UNICEF for convening this meeting. His Excellency, the Vice President of the Republic of Sierra Leone, Dr. Mohamed Jules Diallo, the Minister of Basic and Senior School Education, Dr. David Moninda Sengbe, honorable ministers and representatives from all over Africa, organizations and institutions present, respective partners to education, young leaders and advocates within and beyond the walls of Africa, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, I greet you all. It is an honor and pleasure for Sierra Leone to host wagons of highly intelligent representatives from different countries to deliberate the most important aspect of human capital development, that is education. Thank you all for leaving your zones of comfort and traveled so far to witness this August gathering. I am not just representing myself, but beside me is my feminist sister and fellow advocate Fatou Sise from Potloko District, the Northwest region of Sierra Leone. Together, we work to ensure girls in our community are safe and in and around schools. We work to end gender stereotype. We are not standing here today as a girl for herself, But we are standing here on behalf of our sisters in Sierra Leone, Mali, Burkina Faso, Nigeria, Ghana, Uganda, South Africa, Liberia, Gambia, Guinea, Niger, South Sudan, and all girls in Africa. We are here to welcome you, dear Vice Presidents, Ministers, and Permanent Secretaries. We stand here proud. This week, you are making all children in Africa proud. You are changing the gender norms. You are rewriting the gender script. You are committing to be gender transformative leaders. How happy I am today to sit here with you and talk about those issues. You are standing up for gender transformative education. For this, we say thank you. Moderators and all here, you will agree with me that education is among the most important factor of human existence and development. It is crucial in the process of human capital development. It is more reason why we should be to all children and women. Education should be given to all children, whether be it boy or girl, physically challenged or able. It is true that it may not be a simple thing to do, especially in our societies where girl child is traditionally considered inferior to the boy child, and she is also denied the right of education. This may seem historical to us, but I put it to us all, that it is still happening in many societies of our time. Here we are considered potential homemakers. Here today and every other day, you keep inviting us to discuss problems and barriers to girl child education and map the way forward and find solutions and so on. How long is this going to take? How long do you want us to cry so that you can hear our voices? We have been longing for this over the years, but little or no action is taken. So many barriers to reaching our dreams of becoming educated. We are raped, beaten, killed, humiliated to womanhood. We have suffered from period poverty and female genital cutting. But yet, as girls, we keep going. We are resilient. The dream of education keeps us going. Mr. Vice President, ministers, and all dignitaries here, we say actions start now. These next 2 days, you are doing the work. You are making promise to us girls. In our work for gender transformative education, we often say that the stories of others motivate us not to give up. Each story we hear makes us strong. We encourage you, dear ministers, permanent secretaries, to remember all girls that you have met in your work, all of the stories that you have heard, and to bring them into each session we have in the next 2 days. Lastly, we will end by sharing that we girls have simply refused to be behind the scene in this type of conventions. We can no longer have education boards being established without adolescent girls on those education boards. No, not in 2022 and not ever. We are frontliners. We are champions of our own issues in education, in health, and every other thing that pertains to us. And we are leaders of today. Stop saying leaders of tomorrow. We are demanding for the amplification of our work and that our voices are to be heard. We want to work with you as co-leaders in creating a gender transformative education that creates the Africa we want, the Africa we deserve. We will be watching Dear ministers and permanent secretary, we will be waiting to hear your commitments that are made, and we will be here to support you in taking this forward. As I join my sister Fatou Cissé here to say action starts now, and all of you should join us and say action starts now. We wait no more. Thank you.
Indeed, action starts now. We wait no more. That is Kadiatu, who is a youth activist. Please, another round of applause for her. All right, this event is being led by the United Nations Girls Education Initiative, Gender at the Center. I was going to try and read the French part, but I'm not French, so we'll skip that part. We have UNICEF and the government of Sierra Leone through the Ministry of Basic and Senior Secondary Education. Now we'll move on with the program. Coming up next to give a speech is the director of the United Nations Girls Education Initiative, and that is Antara Ganguly. A round of applause for her.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you, wonderful MCs. You're doing such a great job. To my feminist young sisters, thank you for that inspiring start. Your Excellency, Vice President of the Republic of Sierra Leone, to my minister friends, my deputy minister friends, permanent secretaries and directors. Bonjour, assalamu alaikum, good morning. I want to start us off with a little bit of a journey. Can I ask everyone, please close your eyes. Close your eyes and imagine a village. Perhaps you grew up in a village. So imagine the village you grew up in. Imagine villages you've gone to. So I hope you can see the village. You can see the houses. You can see the small streets. You can see the main street, the water pump, the tea shop or the coffee shop. Now, do you see that field? It could be a football field. It could be a cricket field, that big open space where children play. Now, can you see the children playing? Can you see the colors of their shirts? Some of them are wearing shoes. What color are their shoes? I hope you're imagining it all. The ball going from one place to the other, the kids are shouting. How many of those children are girls? How many of the children that you see in the village in that big football field are girls? I'm sure the answer is either none at all or very few. So all of these children who need to play and need to be outside and need to get exercise, girls don't get the same shot at being in that football field. And this is why we are here today. Our goal is that at the end of these 3 days, the dignitaries who are present today will make commitments, will think through policy actions that they can take in their countries that will lead to the chance of there being girls playing there or eating peanuts there or chatting with their friends there, just a little bit higher than that chance is today. Our agenda is gender transformative leadership. And I keep telling Minister Senge that that is historic. And it's the first time we are doing this. And you know why it's historic? Because this is the first time we have so many ministers, deputy ministers, permanent secretaries coming here today in a workshop to not just discuss leadership and not just discuss gender equality, but to discuss gender transformative leadership. Leadership that is gender transformative and leadership that then leads to transformation of the situation of girls and boys in their country. Here are a few numbers. 67.5% of 15 to 24-year-old young people in the world who are not in any kind of education or work are young women. So what that means is 1 out of 3 young women are not working and are not in any kind of education compared to 1 in 7 men. In sub-Saharan Africa, 6 out of 7 new cases of HIV among adolescents are among girls. 1 in 5 young women are married before the age of 18 compared to 1 in 30 young men. Globally, girls spend 160 million additional hours on care work at home, taking care of younger siblings, cooking, washing dishes, fetching water, than boys do of the same age. And then this is my favorite statistic. Even in OECD countries, girls play far less sports than boys. In the United States, girls have 1.3 million fewer opportunities to play high school boys than sports. In Australia, 69% of adolescent boys play sports in schools compared to only 50% of girls. And in the United Kingdom, 20% of boys are likely to be very active compared to only 14% of girls. So what this tells us is that the problem we are trying to solve is not a developing country problem. It is a universal problem that every country in the world has. Why? Because there is no country in the world that has achieved gender equality. So here we have an opportunity for all of you, ministers, deputy ministers, permanent secretaries, to play a leadership role on being that gender transformative leader and showing the way forward, not just for developing countries, but for the whole world. And this is not just about girls. This is also about boys. We have many men leaders here today. Think back on your lives. Think back on the pressure you faced to grow up and earn money. Think of the pressure that boys face today to be cool and what cool means for boys. Often it means to bully. Often it means to manipulate and hold power over girls. Often it means to be violent. Often it means to not have an image of a positive father who you can look up to and imagine and dream that I want to be that kind of man when I grow up. And that is what education can change. Education can break these cycles. In programs that UNGEI and UNICEF and PLAN and other agencies have done, we have seen that just 6 months of play-based curricula in classrooms through teachers can change attitudes of boys and men. In India, for example, we had them do an exercise where they just tracked for 2 weeks the number of hours their mother and their father spent sleeping, watching TV, cooking, cleaning, and so on. The boys were outraged. They came to school and asked, "Why is my mother only sleeping 5 hours a day? I did not see this before. Why is this happening? Why does my father always get the best piece of chicken first at dinner?" They began to see these things. They began to ask questions. And I guarantee you, these boys are going to grow up to be different men when they are adults. So this is what we are here to talk about this week. By the end of this week, we will have leaders from 16 countries thinking about 1 or 2 or 3 policy changes that you will make in your countries to lead to more gender equal children, who in turn will grow up to be more gender equal adults. So the impact that this confluence of gender and education is not just limited to education. It's not just about gender parity. It's about impacting the world. The wars we have in the world today, whether it's in Europe, whether it's in Yemen, whether it's in Syria, or whether it's conflict in our own countries. Imagine if it didn't always come back to a hunt for power. Who can be powerful? Who can control whom? If we can change those notions of what it takes to be successful, we will literally be changing the world. So I will stop with that right now. We have a very engaging speaker after me. Thank you so much and welcome, delegates.
Thank you very much. Please, a round of applause for her. She's Antara Ganguly, Director for UNGEI. So we have a quick presentation at right about now. We have Ellen, who is also from UNGEI, and Fabricia from UNESCO. Yes, please a round of applause for both of them. A round of applause for both of them. Thank you.
Thank you so much. His Excellency, Mr. Vice President, honorable ministers, honorable deputy ministers, permanent secretaries, our friends from UNGEI, UNICEF, IEP, UNESCO, and especially our young champions, we are so grateful to see you all here today. And we wanted to take just a little bit of your time to present to you the Gender at the Center initiative. The Gender at the Center initiative is co-hosting this event for you today, and it is co-led by UNGEI and IEP UNESCO. So I'm very happy to be here with our colleagues from IEP UNESCO. And many of you will already know the initiative because many of the countries present here are actively engaged in the Gender at the Center initiative. And we are hoping that the other countries will soon join because we're very enthusiastic about this initiative. It's an initiative that's currently implemented in 8 countries in Africa with a very broad ambition to promote gender equality in and through education. And what is special about this initiative is that it's really being led by the ministries of education. Our ministries of education are really the drivers of this initiative, and we really thank you for being the champions of gender equality in and through education. But it's not only the ministries. The Gender at the Center initiative is really highlighted by a broad alliance of partners, and we bring all of these partners together. So we have the donors, we have a civil society coalition, we have technical partners, and we have young feminists engaged in this initiative. And what is special about the initiative is that it's really going to the root causes of gender equality. It's not just talking about girls' education, it's not just talking about gender parity, it's really looking at the root causes of gender equality and trying to tackle these root causes. It's looking at social norms within communities and how to transform them. And very especially, it's also looking at social norms within our very institutions, within our ministries. How can we transform our institutional cultures to show that they are better fit to promote gender equality in and through education? So that's a very broad ambition, but it's well underway for many of our countries. And we hope that we will move forward together and bringing more countries on board. I will now pass it on to my colleague Fabricia. Thank you.
Merci, Hélène. Vos Excellences, Monsieur le Vice-président, Monsieur les ministres, Monsieur et Madame les représentants des gouvernements et Monsieur et Madame les partenaires, les représentants des partenaires techniques et financiers, je suis vraiment ravie d'être ici, donc en tant que représentante de l'Institut international de la planification de l'éducation de l'UNESCO. Et je suis vraiment ravie de co-coordonner cette initiative Gender at the Center with United Nations Girls Education Initiative. Donc merci d'être là, ça représente vraiment une importance énorme pour cette initiative. Et depuis le lancement de cette initiative en 2019, nous avons, je pense, fait des progrès assez considérables en termes de formation, de renforcement des capacités à la fois de nos collègues de la société civile. Plus de 300 acteurs et actrices ont été formés pour soutenir les ministères de l'éducation dans la prise en compte de l'égalité de genre dans et par l'éducation. Ce sont plus de 150 agents et agentes des ministères de l'éducation et aussi des acteurs au niveau décentralisé qui ont été accompagnés par cette initiative pour transformer pour mettre en place vraiment des initiatives significatives dans les ministères de l'Éducation pour vraiment porter cette question de l'égalité de genre dans et l'éducation. Ce sont aussi plus de 2 millions de personnes qui ont été sensibilisées à travers des activités de sensibilisation, des campagnes vraiment innovantes sur le terrain, dans les communautés, qui fait vraiment effectivement la valeur ajoutée de cette initiative. Comme Eline l'a dit, on agit, en tout cas on essaye d'agir vraiment à tous les niveaux, que ce soit au niveau gouvernemental, que ce soit au niveau de la société civile. Nous agissons vraiment à la fois au niveau de l'offre et de la demande de l'éducation. Donc, nous offrons aussi à travers Gender at the Center, nous offrons aussi des ressources à destination des pays de GCI, mais pas que, parce que les pays de GCI, ce sont 8 pays, mais nous agissons vraiment au niveau global et nous offrons différents outils, que ce soit pour accompagner les groupes locaux de l'éducation, que ce soit pour mettre à disposition vraiment des recherches innovantes, que ce soit dans le leadership des femmes à l'école, que ce soit sur les normes de genre. Donc, nous essayons vraiment de mettre à disposition tous ces outils et nous sommes à votre disposition aussi pour voilà, vous mettre à disposition ces différents outils de communication, des outils aussi pour accompagner la prise de décision politique. Et donc, nous espérons que cette étape importante, nous pourrons continuer à porter ensemble des messages très forts, que ce soit en termes de changement de système éducatif, d'intégration du genre de manière vraiment transformative. Donc, pour le Transforming Education Summit, donc nous avons des messages forts en termes de plus de budget pour l'éducation. Nous saluons effectivement les efforts qui ont été faits par la Sierra Leone de dédier 20% de leur GDP dans l'éducation. Nous aimerions que le genre soit vraiment pris en compte de manière significative dans les budgets. Nous aimerions que ce soit pris en compte dans la planification sectorielle, dans l'analyse, dans vraiment tout le cycle de planification. Nous aimerions aussi que vous vous penchiez vraiment sur l'éradication des violences de genre en milieu scolaire et d'autres formes discriminatoires. Et nous sommes vraiment à vos côtés pour porter tous ces messages pour le Transforming Education Summit. Merci, mesdames et messieurs, et à très bientôt pour continuer vraiment à porter ensemble le genre dans l'éducation.
That is Celine and Fabrizio there from UNGEI and UNESCO. We still have a few more speakers and we are moving along with the program. Definitely, it's going to be 3 days of engaging conversations that hopefully can have long-lasting and impactful change in Africa. Our next speaker is Celeste Staley, and she is the Chief of Education at UNICEF. Please, a round of applause for Celeste.
Thank you. I'm too short for this podium. Good morning, Honorable Vice President of Sierra Leone, Dr. Mohamed Jalla, Honorable Minister of Basic and Senior Secondary Education, Minister David Senge, distinguished honorable ministers from many countries throughout Africa and their representatives, government officials from Sierra Leone, deputy ministers, secretary generals, etc. Ms. Antara Gangali, Director of UNGEI, UNICEF Acting Representative Wilberforce Tenge, and UNICEF colleagues from UNGEI, education donors. I especially would like to welcome and thank our distinguished colleagues from Qatar, from Education Above All, for joining this morning, and other education stakeholders, members of the Youth Advisory Group, or else I've heard referred to as Leaders of Today, members of the media, and distinguished ladies and gentlemen. I am honored and thrilled to be here this morning to represent UNICEF and to present to you what's happening in Sierra Leone for gender transformative action and approaches for equitable, inclusive, and quality education for all in Sierra Leone. Just a brief summary of Sierra Leone for those of you not familiar. Sierra Leone made its third democratic transition in 2018. There's a population of a little bit estimated at slightly over 7 million, with 42% of the population under 15 years old. So you understand the need for a strong education system. The government's new direction has a strong mandate for free, quality school education for all. This has been discussed by several of the speakers already. The Ebola outbreak in 2015 and 16 had devastating impact on the country. But even after that devastation, the economy is starting to recover. And we know there are challenges today with global economies, but we see the Sierra Leone economy starting to recover. The COVID-19 also impacted the country both economically and in education when schools were shut for only 6 months, but this did impact access to education for about over 2 million children. But finally, the government is focusing on a business-friendly environment and focusing on tourism. Just briefly, education, sorry, next slide. Education at a glance. Again, we see access to primary education is at 98% enrollment. So almost all kids are in school, primary school. We have also, as mentioned by many speakers, gender parity in Sierra Leone has been achieved from pre-primary up through junior secondary school, with just a slight decrease in senior secondary school. This is a great achievement as well. But yes, we can applaud, but just to preface, parity does not mean equality or equity, and this will be discussed throughout the coming days. And then lastly, again, we mentioned a strong political commitment to education as its flagship program, the Free Quality in School Education Initiative. So we see the government of Sierra Leone has a very strong commitment and political will to having education to promote development. There are many good practices, and I've only mentioned a few here, on achieving gender equality. And again, only a few are mentioned, but this is both supported by government and by education partners, including UNICEF. So we have provided menstrual health hygiene kits and training on menstrual hygiene management, resulting in over 10,000 girls being able to enroll and stay in school. We've also provided basic materials such as uniforms, shoes, stationery to children who are especially vulnerable, and to enable them to enroll and stay in school. And this has resulted to over 200,000 children, including pregnant and lactating girls, that have been supported to enroll and to stay in school. UNICEF with the government has also supported some update of an out-of-school study that was done in 2015, and also has done research on school-related gender-based violence. This has led to solid evidence and a holistic strategy to ensure that children are able to enroll and stay in school, reaching zero out-of-school children. I want to go very, there's a lot of narrative on this slide, but I would like to go relatively quickly because these are general findings from the research that the government and UNICEF supported on both school-related gender-based violence, which we know keeps children, not just girls, but boys as well, out of school, and also on the out-of-school study update. So just very briefly, we know that corporal punishment is a factor that is practiced by many teachers in school. The teaching code of conduct does not condone this, but it still is a common practice. We know teachers have sexual relationships, especially with female students. We have boys that are making sexual comments to girls or touching them inappropriately. Teachers routinely demand money or labor from students. Often girls will exchange sex for transport, for money, or for food, and this is to allow them to go to school. And teachers commonly insult and humiliate students in the classroom. That's from the research we've done on a pilot program on school-related gender-based violence that was funded by USAID. The out-of-school study, which was funded, the update and the research was funded by Irish Aid, and they're similar. You can see the information is very similar. We see child marriage and teenage pregnancy common, with 1 out of 7 girls between the ages of 15 and 19 married. We have physical and sexual violence widespread, including in and around schools. Poverty is one of the leading causes for children to be out of school, and it impacts on this demand for illegitimate fees by teachers. It has costs to the family for the hidden cost of education, opportunity cost for children who are in school who may not be able to stay home or to work. And then you have a lot of children who are orphans and don't have the support, financial or emotional, to attend school. There is a lot of stigma and discrimination around children with disabilities and around girls who are pregnant. There's also a lack of additional support to children with disabilities and to adolescent or teen mothers. There's a shortage of qualified teachers, with approximately 40% of the teaching workforce unqualified. This is something that the ministry is addressing with support from education donors. And lastly, there's not enough infrastructure for children, especially children with disabilities, nor is there the training of teachers on how to reach children and to teach children with disabilities. Some of the drivers that I've already mentioned, I'll go very quickly. Poverty, as we know, does affect children's ability to go to school, and especially has an influence on girls, as we've noted previously, that girls will trade sex for school, for grades, or for transport to school. Girls have little power, and this is a societal norm, but they also have, it leaves them open to more exploitation and vulnerability. There's impunity for teachers and other perpetrators of violence in schools. Often teachers are moved on instead of reprimanded or fired. The teacher code of conduct has clearly outlines how teachers should behave in the classroom and as community, as assets of the community, but this is not always fully understood, nor is it implemented. There can be weak coordination between school leadership and the teachers and from the district ministry officials. There's sexual harassment among peers is seen as normal. And then finally, we mentioned already, poor school infrastructure leaves the schools open to insecurity, where there's no fencing and people can come in and harass the students. So I just want to show you, it's about a 3-minute video, but I think it's very important. It's showing us one of the major factors why girls are out of school, and this has to do with childhood pregnancy and marriage. So let me turn it over to the video. Hopefully it'll work. There's no volume on this video. Volume on videos. So, I think there's a technical problem with the video, so they're going to go back to see if we can broadcast it. Thanks for your patience. Maybe while they're sorting this out, I can go through this slide, which talks about the enabling environment that helps us to address gender equality through education.
So as you see, we already mentioned the free quality school education program. We have strongly committed education donors, looking at the World Bank, UNICEF, the European Union, Foreign Commonwealth Development Office, Irish Aid, among others. Of course, the Sustainable Development Goals lays the foundation for quality education and gender equality. We have these pillars, these 5 pillars above that are strongly have been committed to by the government in Sierra Leone. So you have evidence generation, which we've discussed. I don't know if you can hit the next button, but there's been a lot of support for evidence generation in Sierra Leone, which I've already mentioned. We had the out of school study update. We had the school-related gender-based violence. We have the education sector analysis, which was done in 2019 and 2020 to support the development of the education sector plan. We also carried out or supported a national early grade reading and numeracy assessment, which showed that as we saw, there's more girls in school, but the girls are performing worse than the boys are. So when I say gender parity does not mean quality or equity, that's what I mean by this. It's kind of jumping, sorry, the presentation is jumping, but gender desegregated data, which we also have through the Education Management Information System and the annual school census. So we know how many girls are in school, and that's where we see that there are more girls in school than boys. We have policy development, which we've already mentioned many times in this morning on the radical inclusion policy, which focuses on making sure vulnerable and marginalized children are able to be in school. Last year, we also was approved the integrated childhood development policy. We know that getting foundational learning skills through pre-primary education sets the stage for success throughout academic life and into later life. We also mentioned already the out-of-school strategy, which was based on the updated study, which is a very solid, holistic strategy that we hope will be rolled out and implemented in the coming years. And this we need strong donor support for. And then finally, for the curriculum development and revision, we have the basic education curriculum, which was recently revised, senior secondary curriculum, which was just rolled out. We have a pre-service training curriculum and a comprehensive sexuality education, which is very important to ensure that not just girls, but boys and girls understand their bodies and how to prevent pregnancy, which we know is a leading cause of dropouts. And the video is ready now. So let's go to the video, and then I just have one more slide, and then we will wrap up. So I think this is an important video, though, for all of us to watch. So you can go back one slide.
When I was a little child, I want to have a family and a nice home. I also want to be a lawyer when I grow up. My name is Adam Sekabo. I am 15 years old. I live with my grandma since the age of 5 years.
Abuchi Adam say, because Papa no one, Mama no one, Abuchi for me. I can't name you on the land because I'm not going to do it. What Miss Monroe will see? I became a full up, then put up Pamundo, I put up Pamundo, my house. Now I say that if I am say married, like us, that he can take care of me.
My grandma told me that someone to come to marry me. I was only 13 years old, I felt bad because I wanted to go to school. I told her no. My grandmother was angry and she didn't like it, but I didn't mind because I knew saying no was the best for me.
We learned that Adam says grandmother wanted to give her to marriage. So we decided to meet the grandmom and talk to her. The mom at first did not even want to listen to us. But we tried our level best and we showed her the benefit of sending girls to school. I think that's will be the reason that she finally accepted to send Adamsi to school.
My grandmother returned the dowry. I'm thankful for the mentor who talked to my grandmother. If not for them, I will be out of school and married. Now I go to the safe space supported by UNICEF. The mentor talked to us about a lot of things like child marriage, teenage pregnancies, and hygiene.
Our goal is to ensure that we reach more girls like Adam C so that they complete their school and become successful in life.
Benefits the way you get when you done in school.
I am now the 5th year of primary school. I want to be educated because I know it will help me with my future.
So thank you. I think that was a very striking video that helped to show us that it really requires a holistic approach to making sure girls are able to go and to stay into school. So while the Ministry of Education is important, we also work closely with the Ministry of Gender and Children's Affairs, the Ministries of Health and Sanitation, and others to make sure that there's a holistic system in place to make sure girls are in school. So my last slide, I just wanted to touch base briefly on some of the actions that are ongoing in the country to address some of the challenges that we've just looked at. But the framework we have, again, we have a gender responsive life skills framework that was developed over the past years. There are toll-free helplines. Ministry of Education is 8060 that is open for children, for parents, for teachers, for anyone to call in to get information on education or to report any of these challenges or any violence to the ministry. There's also a gender-based violence hotline at 116. And then we have also mentioned earlier the comprehensive sexuality education. But just very briefly, on the early stimulation, I don't know if you can hit the next button, but we are supporting, again, a preschool and pre-primary education through expansion of infrastructure, through training packages, through materials that are distributed to the ECD centers and also a national ECD radio program. Foundational learning, so for the early grades specifically, we're focused on teacher training for early grade teachers P1 through P3. We also are providing learning materials. The out-of-school children, specifically looking at the out-of-school study, which I've already mentioned. We also provide teaching and learning materials and other items for children, especially children with disabilities. And we're continuing to strengthen the reporting and referral systems that I just mentioned on the hotline and through the Ministry of Gender and Children's Affairs. Menstrual health hygiene, we haven't really touched base on this, but this is a leading cause for adolescent girls to drop out of school. We're working with government to provide menstrual health hygiene kits and training for adolescent girls. And then finally, we do have digital learning through Upshift, which provides content and materials for children to gain 21st century skills. Again, next slide. I want to thank all of you for your attention and for welcoming you to Sierra Leone and wishing you the next 3 days of informative and successful discussions. And again, welcome to Mama Salon. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Grace. Celeste. Honorable Vice President, distinguished delegations, ladies and gentlemen, this morning we've listened to a number of remarks that have been made, but it is now time that we listen to a statement. And this statement is going to be made by no less a person than the man that is the brain behind the leap in progress that has been made in the recent past. Honorable Vice President, if overtime is permitted in the civil service of Sierra Leone, civil servants in the ministry will have a lot of money because we work for long hours, we work at home, we work during the weekend, but that is just to be able to keep to the pace of the minister and the expectation of the people of Sierra Leone. Indeed, our minister is a magic bullet. You only need to fire him in any direction and he can hit the intended target. I am pleased to invite Dr. Moedin Asenge to make the statement.
Thank you. Honorable Vice President, honorable ministers, Your Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, chers amis, bonjour, bienvenue à Freetown. We are very grateful for your presence, gathering education leaders from 16 countries here in Sierra Leone is already an historic achievement. Thank you all for making the journey by air, sea, and land to arrive in our beautiful bubble. It is truly a unique and special experience, and consider this your second home as well. We will work hard to make this workshop not just a historic meeting, but a historic inflection point for gender equality and for girls' education in the world, starting from the African continent. Since we're in the business of education, let me start by asking a question. Why are we focused squarely on gender equality in and through education? A critical voice might argue that it's a nice thing to have, but there are other needs which might be more pressing. And before I answer that question, let me tell you a story. 27 years ago, our nation debated if and how Sierra Leone should return to democracy in these very walls. The outcome was far from certain at the time, with an ongoing armed conflict and sharp political divisions. But the Bintumani conferences held here became a turning point. The conferences included all parts of society and from all regions of Sierra Leone. The message sent then was clear. There could be no peace without elections. Because of the Bintumani conferences, elections were held again in 1996 and democracy was restored. I mentioned that the conference aimed to include all groups of society, but one group led the charge. Please allow me to quote from the reports from the first Bintumani conference. A conclusive note of the Bintumani conference was the decisive emergence of the women of Sierra Leone as a political force to be reckoned with. It was the exceptional organizational ability of the women's groups together with their determination to promote the democratization process that galvanized the conference into effective action. The tone was set at Bintamani, and the women's groups did not give up until final victory on election day. Certainly, it will forever be difficult to imagine any future political development in Sierra Leone without the involvement of our courageous women. End of quote. Sierra Leone will forever owe a debt of gratitude to our courageous women, our daughters, sisters, wives, mothers, and grandmothers. They helped us fight for and win the peace we now enjoy. But we also need their voice now to build our future. The foundation of our democracy rests on the full participation of our courageous women of all ages in our debates. And it is the only path to a peaceful and prosperous society. You know something else that guarantees that outcome in society? Quality education. This is why we work to strengthen education as a vehicle to get more courageous women to lend their full voice to our future political development. When girls have equal access and progression in our education systems, they will better participate in our political systems. When we ensure that they are not just included and protected, but empowered and encouraged, they will empower and encourage all of us. We really cannot make a better investment than an investment in girls' education. I look forward to discussing with you in the coming days how we can transform our education systems to become vehicles for building our societies based on gender equality. I will not preempt our discussions by suggesting how we should go about this. Instead, I look forward to learning from and with you all. Let the best ideas emerge, no matter who's the first to voice them. Let us discuss and disagree, but let us resolve to come together to think strategically about how to turn our ideas into action. When we leave here to do our national consultations and our national education sector plans, our goal must be to do so full of inspiration and urgency to make the spirit of this workshop a reality in our countries. Today, I'm proud to tell you, and as you've seen, that Sierra Leone has achieved gender parity in our schools. We have more girls enrolled, more girls taking exams, and more girls passing. But that's just the start. We want our girls to transition to higher and technical institutions, particularly pursuing STEM-related courses. We want more women in our classrooms, and we want more women leaders. That is why our government has made it tuition-free for any girl wanting to pursue these courses related to STEM and education. 17 years, tuition-free enrollment and access to education. I encourage all of us to be ambitious. Let us go beyond gender parity in access in education. Let us make sure that the full rewards of education are also enjoyed equally. Let us make sure that we lay the foundation for societies with equality before the law, equal representation, equal pay for equal work, and equal opportunity regardless of your gender, physical ability, the size of your bank account, or the location of your home. We are privileged to be able to work together the next couple of days to make this an inflection point. Let us use our time well, and let us return home and make it a reality. As the co-chair of the UNESCO High-Level Steering Committee of SDG 4 and the co-chair of the UN Secretary General's Transforming Education Summit Advisory Committee, I must say, we are all eagerly waiting for the output document from this session. It is a tremendous opportunity for the African region to take the lead in transforming education. I thank our collaborators, UNGEI and UNICEF, for making sure this happened. And I hope my colleague ministers will be in Paris with me at the pre-summit in the end of June, and then in New York in September as we commit to transforming education. Thank you for being here, and a big thank you to the many people who worked tirelessly to make this workshop a reality. Now it is up to us to make it a success. Perhaps it is important I introduce myself appropriately. Hi, my name is Moinina David Senge. I'm the Minister of Basic and Senior Secondary Education, and I'm a feminist. Thank you.
We definitely want more feminists. There's another feminist in the house, Chernobyl, who's all known. Yes, more feminists needed. That's the Minister of Basic and Senior Secondary Education, Moinina Senge. David Moinina Senge. I hope I didn't get that wrong. Of course, this historic event that we are witnessing is led by the United Nations Girls Education Initiative, Gender at the Center, UNICEF, the government of Sierra Leone through the Ministry of Basic and Senior Secondary Education. It is my honor to welcome our keynote speaker to give the keynote address. No less a person than the Vice President of the Republic of Sierra Leone, Dr. Mohamed Julde Jallow. Your Excellency.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, honorable ministers, our brothers and sisters across the African continent, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, delegates, good morning. First, let me take this opportunity to formally welcome you on behalf of His Excellency the President, Dr. Julius Maada Bio, to Sierra Leone. His Excellency the President, who is a champion of girls' education, would have loved to be here this morning, but is currently out of the country on an emergency travel. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, I also want to personally, on behalf of the government and people of Sierra Leone, welcome our brothers and sisters from Burkina Faso, Chad, Niger, Mauritania, the Gambia, South Sudan, Liberia, Nigeria, Tanzania, Mozambique, Uganda, our co-organizers from Eswatini, DRC, France, Belgium, India, and the United States. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, it is with great pride and great honor to let you know that as a country and as a people, we are very happy to host this event as it speaks to an initiative that is very close to our hearts and vital to the kind of Sierra Leone we want to build in the future. As a government, we are deeply convinced that education should be the centerpiece of any government investment in its people. Therefore, our commitment to addressing the barriers that impede gender equality in education is rooted in our conviction that no society or country can grow if half of its population is plagued by barriers. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, these commitments can be broken down into various streams. First is our deep-seated conviction to promote and enhance women empowerment as a very viable pathway to gender equality in this country. Second is the various policy actions to translate our conviction, such as the creation of the Ministry of Basic Education. When we came in as a government, we decided to separate the Ministry of Education into two, essentially to create a focus on primary basic education, primary and secondary education, with overall focus and emphasis on girls' education. This explains today the relevance of the radical inclusion policy to support our girls, including those who are pregnant or have children, to continue their education. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, honorable ministers, in 2018, we launched the free quality education, which guaranteed 13 years of basic and secondary school education, and 17 years, like the minister just said, free tuition for girls in STEM. We added, as a government, 8,000 more female teachers to the classrooms. We have today about 2.6 million kids in school, of which girls we are recorded highest both in public and private schools. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, honorable ministers, between 2015 and 2021 alone, we can proudly state that we have achieved gender parity in schools through such transformative policies. We continue to put 22% of the GDP of this country in education, equaling Iceland as the third country in the world that is spending the most in education in relation to their GDP. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, let me also highlight that this investment is not only to promote girl and women empowerment, is not only limited to our expenditure in education. It is also spread out across various sector ministries addressing critical SDGs. For example, our investment in the health sector. Our investment in the health sector is essentially focusing around maternal and infant health. Today, I will tell you clearly that in 2018, when we assumed office, budgetary allocation to the health sector was 6%. In the last 4 years, we have increased that progressively to 11.4%. Although we know that we are still short of the 15% that is expected of sub-Saharan African countries to meet the Abuja Declaration, we are sure that with the commitment we are making and the progress we are making, we will get to that 15%. Equally, we created a standalone Ministry of Gender and Children Affairs. Today, that ministry is working very hard to push the frontiers and then overturn the barriers to women empowerment and gender equality in this country. As a government, we responded with vigor against rape and other gender-based violences. We amended the Sexual Offences Act. We declared rape as a state emergency in this country and equally established a sexual offences court. As the Deputy Minister of Gender just highlighted, the government has approved the Gender Equality and Women Empowerment Policy, which is before Parliament now. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, honorable ministers, all these policy actions are designed to protect women and provide opportunity for young girls to go to school, keep them in school, and make them feel safe in their environment wherever they are. These efforts are no doubt being complemented by the Hands of Our Girls campaign undertaken by the First Lady of this Republic. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, honorable ministers, although we have come a long way to ensure that we place gender equality at the center of our transformative drive in education, we are only getting started. But we are convinced that this initiative, the GCI, no doubt provide a platform to reflect and deepen our effort. The SDGs horizon are not far away. We have to take bold steps as government to mainstream gender equality and in and through our national education system. Madame, Messieurs, honorables ministres, je voudrais d'abord profiter pour vous souhaiter bienvenue en Sierra Leone. Comme je viens d'évoquer, on a dépensé en tant que gouvernement 22% de notre budget dans le secteur éducatif. Aujourd'hui, on est fiers. On est fiers des énormes progrès qu'on a fait dans le secteur éducatif. Aujourd'hui, en Sierra Leone, on a 2,6 millions d'enfants au niveau primaire et secondaire qui bénéficient aujourd'hui des écoles gratuites. Ces efforts, comme je viens d'évoquer en anglais, c'est essentiellement lié à notre conviction en tant que gouvernement et en tant que peuple that l'éducation pour les filles, pour les enfants, c'est vital pour le développement de notre société et notre pays. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, Madame, Monsieur, honorables ministres, je sais bien qu'on a bien parti, bon, mais le chemin est très loin. Bon, je suis convaincu que les plateformes comme ça, les initiatives comme celle-ci, ça va être un bon départ pour nous. Et je suis convaincu aussi, en tant que peuple et en tant qu'une nation progressive, on va y arriver. Je voudrais, dans cette optique, promouvoir, dire aujourd'hui, en toute honnêteté, en toute confiance, que au nom du président, son Excellence Julius Maada Bio, I want to formally open this high-level meeting and to wish you fruitful deliberations and hope that whatever outcomes that come from this 2-day, 3 days meeting will form the basis for the education summit, both in Paris and in New York. On that note, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, I also want to take the opportunity to introduce to you the Youth Advisory Group. This Youth Advisory Group is just one of several initiatives we are undertaking to ensure that we mainstream gender equality in and through our national education system. So I want to present to you the Youth Advisory Group. This was done in consolidation, in collaboration with Plan International. The Youth Advisory Group, please. Please come to the stage so that we can showcase you as champions, young champions of gender equality in education. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, this is the Youth Advisory Group. This initiative is supported in collaboration with Plan International. These are the young champions, that these are just one of several initiatives that the Minister of Education, the infatigable Minister of Education, who I want to personally thank, and thank the entire ministry for their tireless effort to promote gender parity in education. Thank you very much. Assalamu alaikum.
The Vice President just launched the Youth Advisory Group. Please, a round of applause for the Vice President of the Republic of Sierra Leone. Dr. Mohamed Julde Jallow. I now call on David to please come introduce as we quickly round up the program for today, or for now, because this is a three-day event. As we quickly round up, David will introduce the person who is going to give us the vote of thanks. And there is definitely going to be a photo op, so please don't go anywhere.
Thank you very much. Coming to the close of the program, it is also my honor and privilege to invite the Deputy Minister of Education too, in the person of Madam Amusu Masakoi, to come and move the vote of thanks.
His Excellency, the Vice President, Dr. Mohamed Julde Jallow, members of Parliament, our UN partners, UNGEI, UNICEF, distinctly my boss, Dr. David Moinina-Sengeh, colleague ministers, members of the Fourth Estate, staff of MBSSE and all other ministries, our education partners, ladies and gentlemen. I deem it a great honor and privilege to move the vote of thanks on this memorable and high-level occasion. Firstly, we are proud as a country and we are proud of our government, for which we extend special thanks to His Excellency, the President, retired Brigadier Dr. Julius Maada Bio, for the choice of education to bring informed, radiant light to empower a large generation with knowledge through the human capital development. Today, we are honored to have our Vice President gracing this transformative leadership meeting. This is indicative of the premium our government puts on education and gender. Thank you so much, Honorable Vice President, for the keynote address and the launching of the Youth Advocacy Group. So UNGEI, we are pleased that you chose Sierra Leone as the first to host such a high-level meeting. And we are indeed pleased to showcase our many transformations supporting our free quality education, the radical inclusion, and many more. Thank you, Antara Anguli, the director of UNGEI, and your entire secretariat. All of this could not have been possible without the innovative leadership of our boss, the able and innovative Dr. David Moinina-Sengeh, the Minister of Basic and Senior Secondary, with his dynamic team. I think he deserves a bit more. Thank you. With his dynamic team at the ministry, who are constantly on the wheels, ensuring no child is left out through our innovative ideas to transform education. Thanks to all colleague ministers and friends of education who have traveled from afar, and hope that through the next 3 days, you will take a message home to your various countries to transform the world. My heartfelt thanks to all heads of various ministries and heads of departments for the valuable contributions, guidance, and encouragement in all efforts. Finally, thanks to our distinguished invitees present here and for honoring our invitation. Thanks to the organizers, the planners. Everyone must agree with me that a lot of thought and processing would have gone into this planning. Thank you all so much for coming, and have a safe trip back at the end of the 3 days.
That's the Deputy Minister of Basic and Senior Secondary Education. So now we're going to have a photo opportunity with the Vice President, our visiting guests, the ministers, our visiting ministers. And for this, I'm going to call Celine She's going to come and she's going to assist with that.
Thank you. Yeah, I just wanted to explain the rest of the program. So now we will have a photo opportunity here at the stage, and then we'll go into coffee break, which is over there. And then we invite our country delegations in that room over there at 12:15 to go on with the program. So this is for the ministries, the deputy ministries, the secretary generals, and the other country delegates. So we will be expecting you in that room over there at 12:15. For all of us, lunch will be served in the lunchroom over there at 1 p.m. Thank you. So please be invited for the photo opportunity here.
Okay. All right. We have 3 sets of photos that we're going to have this morning. The first set of people will be the Minister of Basic and Senior Secondary Education, donors, visitor ministers, ministers of government, and they'll be taking this picture with the Vice President of Sierra Leone. So we're going to be having the pictures here. Okay. Okay. So we'll have the visiting ministers first. We'll have the visiting ministers first. So Minister of Basic and Senior Secondary Education, donors, visiting ministers, please come on stage. Yeah. Okay. Can we also have the representative of the ministers as well for those who are not here? Yeah. So the next sets of pictures we're going to have, still with the Vice President of Sierra Leone, Minister of Basic and Senior Secondary Education, donors, visiting delegates. The delegates,